This is a presentation of News 4 Sports. News 4 presents the inaugural Celestial Seasoning Zinger Cycling Challenge.
Live from Breckenridge tonight, the finish line of the first ever Celestial Season Zinger Challenge. Professional road racing, folks, is back in Colorado. Good evening, everyone. I'm Mark Soysher, along with Greg Moody and champion cyclist Davis Finney. What we're talking about here tonight is welcoming you to News 4's exclusive coverage of this Celestial Seasons Classic, the challenge that takes place here tonight. And Davis, what we're talking about is 138 miles over about 7.5 hours, about 14,000 feet worth of altitude, over 7 mountain climbs. We've already got a show called Survivor, but I think that would have worked better than Challenge for this.
Well, it makes me tired hearing you just speak about it, but I would say brutal doesn't even do this race justice. It is really something to look at this course and think, these guys are going to ride their bikes over all these hills. It's very, very hot today, and then the weather changes. So it's Colorado. I mean, you know, we could get anything, and it's pretty exciting.
Greg, you rode along with them today.
Yes.
In a motorized vehicle, we should mention. This course is an incredible thing.
It is an incredible thing. This is one of those courses that, well, if you get out on a bike and you're doing it, all you can think is, please, dear God, let this end.
What makes this course difficult right from the start is altitude. The riders are starting at 5,300 feet above sea level in Boulder and begin climbing immediately up to 8,600 feet on Wonderview, and it never lets up.
It's unrelenting. I mean, you go climb after climb after climb, and it's a stair step up. It's not a stair step up and then a stair step down. It's just up, a little bit down, up, a little bit down, up, a little bit down. And then you add in this great drama of having gravel roads, which I love.
The first real gravel the riders should hit is just past the first sprint in Blackhawk Central City as they travel over Oh My God Road at 9,300 feet. That leads to a hot descent into Idaho Springs. Just beyond the springs begins the climb to Georgetown, followed by the first real killer, the climb to Guanella Pass at 11,671 feet. That takes you on gravel roads to a hair-raising descent into Grant, followed immediately by another climb over Kenosha Pass at 10,000 feet. One more small descent, another climb, and then the final killer up to Hoosier Pass. They will be so thankful to be there. The descent into Breckenridge could be a make or break on this race. A small group leading at the top of Hoosier Pass could barrel down to Breckenridge for a very exciting finish. Find another course like this anywhere.
A difficult course, but a fun course to watch. It was much more fun to watch it, I suspect, than do it.
I would think so. There's about 100 of them that start this thing off, Davis. But who are the guys do you expect to finish and finish near the top?
Well, when you talk to a number of riders, everybody says Scott Moniger. He's from Boulder, and this is certainly a race that he has focused long on. And so Scott Moniger was the number one name on everybody's lips when we talked to them this morning. But also Chris Weary. He's another man from Boulder. He's very strong. He's coming back from sort of a slow part of his season, but he's really focused on this race. He's done a lot of long mountain rides. And then there's a guy named Jess Swiggers, who was a last-minute entrant. He's a very young rider. He is one of the mountain bike riding contingent. But Jess Swiggers is a man for the future, and he's pretty psyched up today.
Now, those are the favorites for today. Like we said, there are many that are just starting this thing out. This course, though, can take out even the best of riders. We mentioned who the favorites are. Who knows if those guys are going to be there by the time we get to the finish line. This course, though, is just as demanding psychologically as it is physically. Going into the race, the feeling is that the course is simply going to pound these riders. As Greg explained earlier, it's tough right from the start, with the climbing beginning just past the starting line and not ending until just before the finish. This is a course that will take the measure of the man and determine the strength of his team. Not in any one specific place, but overall. This is a race of attrition all along the course.
Oh my God, too. It's just that that's early enough in the race that a little more of a gamble if you want to take a risk
to get a lead at that point. So I think it's more of a cautious part of the race, but I do believe that it will be relatively split up to that point, and there may be some regrouping after Oh My God when they go towards Georgetown. I think Guanella Pass coming down will be interesting because it's dirt, and depending on how recently it's been graded, how deep the surface is, you know, and how slippery it is up there. I mean, the guys will be able to handle it, but it'll be a different kind of a thing. And if you're not used to riding dirt roads, a little bit more challenging, especially on the road bikes with little narrow tires.
And that's merely 2 points in a race full of them. Watch for the early challenges and the early fades, as well as a cycling adventure through the Colorado high country. The riders aren't looking forward to a bit of this, but for those who finish, they'll always have the satisfaction of knowing they did it. Well, it's been a dozen years, guys, since we had a Coors Classic race, and there are a lot of people who deserve credit for bringing the challenge back here again to Colorado. Of course, there's the race director, Lynn Pettijohn, who's done a terrific job, and Michael Eisner, who was the director of the old Red Zinger race and the Coors Classic before that. And how could we forget Celestial Seasons founder Mo Siegel, whose obsession with physical fitness and cycling is really why we're all gathered here today.
In the beginning, people were kind of riding around parks, and it was kind of cute in America. But with sports out there like the Eco Challenge and all of the tough sports that are going on, something that's got the guts, and this has got the guts. The climbs in this race start at the altitude that peak in the Tour de France. The Tour de France, the highest race, is about less than 9,000 feet. Colorado Rockies, we can hit a 12,000 or 11,500 or something, no problem. These are going to be brave men that finish this race. Yeah, there's a buzz. It's good. I love to see it.
What Mo didn't say that is he's really into torture. Racing is next. When we come back, we will head to the starting line in Boulder. The first riding of the Celestial Seasoning Zinger Cycling Challenge is coming up next. Welcome back to Breckenridge, everyone, and the Zinger Cycling Challenge. Mark Seuscher again with Davis Finney and Greg Mooney. And guys, let's get this thing started. It all begins in Boulder, Colorado, right outside of the Boulderado Hotel. That's where the starting point of the race is. More than 100 racers will get things started today. Most of them won't make it to the finish line. The first 3.9 miles of this, though, is neutral, so there's no racing. But once they make it out of Boulder, then the challenge is on. The first section we'll cover takes us on south on Highway 93 into Jefferson County until the riders make the turn onto Highway number 72, and then they get to begin. And the Celestial Seasoning Zinger Cycling Challenge is underway. Davis, can there be any strategy when you're in a neutral stage? Is it more of a parade lap?
No, it's a parade, and they want to get the riders out of town safely. And, of course, the riders have been anticipating this race for some time and sort of, nervous. I talked to a number of the riders. They hadn't slept very well. And so it's just sort of letting yourself get unwound, and you get to the edge of town, and then that flag goes, and then the race really takes off.
So we've officially started the race now. 7.8 miles from here to turn on to Highway number 72. Greg?
Well, what was interesting is that one rider broke away almost immediately. And for whatever reason, he was just getting out and trying to get some time on people. And it was almost a joke, but in another way, it was good for you to get out there and actually start stretching your legs early.
Well, that's right. I mean, right off the bat, you've got three riders actually off the front with Trent Klosner from Saturn. It didn't surprise me at all to see Trent out there because he is very aggressive, and you've got a climb that goes right out of town. And if you can get a little bit of a lead, you get a little bit out of sight, then what happens, as we can see, is the pack just starts to take it easy. And these guys head towards Wonderview. They can go their own pace. They're not probably expecting to win this overall ride, but there's a big premium Blackhawk.
Okay, we've left Boulder behind now, but our Vic Lombardi was part of the send-off party.
Fellas, I remember as a kid coming up to Boulder to watch the original Zinger. We were pressed against the rail as European teams passed out their hats here. American legends were born here. You got the feeling that this was something special. Today, that feeling was back.
There's a buzz.
What do you mean we still got 50 miles left?
This was what it was, bike racing was all about, and being a fan of bike racing in the States, it was, there was nothing else like it.
Proud to return to Boulder.
You can feel it in the air, and I think the course is the reason. If this were just kind of ordinary bike racing, it'd be a big bore.
Boulderite Tom Bremer saw every start of the original Zinger, and he has the pictures to prove it.
There he is, Greg LeMond and Bernardino. The big three. The two men of grit.
As you can see, the Le Mans name is still prevalent today. For most of these young cyclists, the old Zinger is just a memory. But for 37-year-old Mike Carter, it was real. He raced it.
I was Alexei Greywall's first lieutenant, his domestique, and we were taking on the 7-11 team. Davis ended up winning that year, but we really made him earn it.
So what once was the greatest stage race in American history is now a one-day marathon, the most demanding of its kind. And back where it belongs. Fellas, let's get back to racing.
Thank you, Vic. Back out on the course on Highway 72, and Trent Klasner is our leader at this point.
Well, Trent Klasner has got a good group here. 3 riders riding well together. Josh Collingswood, he rides for a team Jelly Belly. They're a jelly bean company, and it's a good sponsor to have.
Here's where they're headed in this section. From the turn onto 72, we'll go west up to Wonderview and keep it going until we hit Highway 119.
Big cream in Wonderview.
Now we've got 2 chasers, actually, ironically, from Texas, and these guys are going to find it a little bit troublesome to go up these hills because they're from a pretty flat terrain, and they aren't Lance Armstrong.
Not set on altitude either.
Not at all. Number 32 is Josh Collingswood from Australia with the Jelly Belly team. It looks like he's lost a little bit of the ground from Brendan Vesti, a New Zealand rider, and Trent Klasner. So these riders starting to pull away on this tough grade towards Wonderview.
In a race like this, a lot of these guys are used to racing at altitude, but maybe at Boulder level. When they come up to the altitudes that they're dealing with here, how much of a difference is there?
Well, there is quite a bit of difference. I talked to this man, Chris Horner, just this morning. He said, I flew in last night. I couldn't even sleep. The altitude here in Boulder seemed high to me.
Guys, now we're talking about cash. It's a sprint at this point, and I think that'll you got to get your priorities straight here. It's the third section of the Zinger. We'll cover 15 miles from the start at Highway 119 to the Mardi Gras Casino in Blackhawk. Now, the first one to get there wins a $5,000 premium. That's as long as they finish the race. And this is what was waiting for them, Davis, when they got to Blackhawk today.
I'll throw you too. Well, Blackhawk certainly was incentive to get out there early. I don't know if you could call this a sprint, though, because there is a lot of climbing from Boulder to Blackhawk.
Yeah, I'll tell you, though, what's great to see all along the course today, we had tremendous crowds. The people were really into it. It was a lot of fun, and it was great to see them really backing, riders like Vesti.
Brendan Vesti here is the guy who comes into town first. Davis, you surprised that it was him?
Well, Brendan Vesti is sort of a name we haven't seen much on the American scene. As I said, he's from New Zealand. He rides for Navigators, and he's obviously having a very good day. Oh, there's our proverbial devil. Anyone who follows European racing, every time you go up a big climb in Europe, you see the devil. Well, here is the reincarnate Colorado Devil giving Vesti the thumbs up.
So it's good to see the devil. You want to see this devil.
This devil, well, you hope so.
The interesting point here also is that he has to finish the race. It's not like he can just throw all of his strategy aside and just go out and try to be the first one to get to Blackhawk.
Well, that's right. I mean, he's putting out a tremendous amount of energy. He's left Trent Klasner behind. He's going down this nice descent into Blackhawk. So he's going to scoop this easily to get this 5,000. But it isn't easy, as you say, because he's got to get through to the end.
So here comes Brendan Vesti into Blackhawk. And the $5,000, by the way, is in cash. It is not in chips to be used at the casino.
To be used later.
Well, let's not forget it's about 95 degrees out here. It's very, very hot.
And he has to go through so many different changes here, Davis. At this point, it's mostly on the road, using the cycling bike that's quick, but he has to go through all the off-road portion of this,
Well,
too.
that's right, and that comes up quite quickly. Strong climb coming up out of Blackhawk, very, very steep. He's got a pretty good lead right now, so he can afford to pace himself, but then it's down Oh My God Road. And when you get to the top of Oh My God Road and you look down that side, you're kind of going, I hope I can take my time.
Yeah, I was sitting in the back seat of a car, and I was going, move it over, move it over.
Yeah.
Saying, oh my God. Now, once we get out of Central City, we hit Highway 279, better known as Oh My God Road. 7 miles of dirt, dangerous curves, and drop-offs unprotected from guardrails till we reach Idaho Springs.
It was a chilling descent. Even in the car and watching the riders come around some of these turns was just amazing today.
Well, and what you could really see was that some riders felt very comfortable on this type of terrain, especially the mountain bikers, and some riders did not feel comfortable at all.
A couple of hairpin turns that people were going way too fast for, too.
Well, that's right, and consequently, it actually split up quite a bit on the descent because people were being very careful and they were losing a lot of time.
And here's Brendan Vesti, still leading, on his way to Central City, and then he will, of course, move into Oh My God Road. Not far behind, though, and here's the surprise, Jess Swiggers, number 155.
Well, Jess Swiggers and his partner there in crime out front, you might say, is Michael Carter. They took off a little bit after one of you and have just slowly made up ground on everybody as we get now to what remains of the pack after the stiff climb out of Central City. And you can see how the riders are really taking it easy. But Jess Swiggers and Michael Carter, they're sitting in between this pack and the front rider, which is Brendan Vesti. So Vesti does not have long to live out front, I don't think.
You know, it's very exciting to watch Jess Swiggers ride and to watch young riders like him come along and make such a strong showing as he's doing in the Zinger.
He's considered a mountain biker. Is that how does the cycling community view that?
Well, I tell you what, the mountain bikers didn't get the best rap when it came to being in this long event. They said, oh, well, yeah, these guys are very good at going for about 2 hours. And I said, you know, these guys train pretty hard. And Jess Swiggers, what I love about that kid is he is only 20 years old, but he's not afraid to just get out there and put it all on the pavement, or on here, you might say, the off pavement.
So at about this point into the race, we're about 2 hours into it. Can you be feeling too comfortable at this point, thinking, you know, hey, I only got 5.5 hours to go?
Well, what you see here is a tactical situation because there's riders like Scott Moniger, we mentioned him, like Chris Weary, and some of the favorites sitting back in this group and wanting to maintain fairly close contact, not wanting to have any problems as they head down this difficult descent. A lot of rocks here, easy to get a flat, easy to scrub out and go down, and you don't need to go down at this point in the race. But as we go up front, Brendan Vesti is off of the dirt and onto the pavement, heading right into Idaho Springs. So Vesti's still clear at this point. He's safe, he's good, but it's a long ways as they get on the way towards Georgetown.
And Jess Swiggers has just taken the lead moving in there. Let's talk about the change in terrain. They're now riding on pavement. We watched them coming downhill, going over rocks and, you know, pebbles and things. And how difficult is that to constantly be changing the terrain in a race?
You know, it's funny because I didn't even catch that Jess Swiggers had gone so well down that descent. He blew right by Vesti. So Swiggers is showing his talent and showing where mountain biking helps you in an event like the Zinger because it's got all these different terrain changes.
He knows how to change. He knows how to change terrains.
Now, do you think he's catching people by surprise in that kind of situation? I mean, people are going, who is this guy?
Yeah.
Everybody is surprised by him all day long. I'm thinking, and he's one of those guys. They're going to be looking at him all day and wondering how far he can really go.
Because we've talked about this course too as almost being more of an obstacle course than just a flat-out race.
Yeah, well, these are some kind of obstacles, believe me.
Yes.
They get to Guanella Pass, and you're looking at something that most of these riders have never really done. But Jess Swiggers is not afraid of anything, and that's what I love about the guy. He just seems to have a real passion for this race.
Yeah.
Jeff Swiggers is still your leader of the Zinger Challenge. Right now he makes his way out of Idaho Springs. Now here's our next section of the race, and this one poses no big challenge. It's a 12-mile stretch between Idaho Springs and Georgetown. No big climbs, and best of all, there's a meal along the way. Here's what we're talking about. They get into town here, and I guess you could say they're going to pick up their sack lunch.
This is fast food. This is food on the go. You grab a bag. In the bag could be anything, little sandwiches, energy drinks, energy bars, all kinds of stuff you need just to keep going on a race like this.
Davis, how do you eat a meal while you're riding in a bike race?
Well, you eat it in very small pieces. Basically, as Greg said, you take a power bar, you take a power gel, you take on whatever you need to keep drinking. But this race, it's very important to be fueling all the time because the calories these guys are burning, and you see some of the guys who've stopped burning calories because they've literally stopped the race.
They've burned out. They have hit the wall.
Were you surprised by how many guys, even at that point, had already said, "I've had it"?
Actually, I was. I was expecting. I'm expecting Guanella to take a lot, but even at this point, to see him dropping out is a surprise.
So Georgetown is just ahead. Jeff Swiggers, still the leader, but Greg, he's not out there by himself.
No, he's not. The people who keep him going are the people who actually keep him on the road, the support crews. These are the people who will fix him in any kind of trouble.
Look at the red Zinger this way. It's like the Indy 500 stretched out in a straight line with the pit crews and all those cars behind the race.
You have a flat tire, you need another article of clothing, you need a rain jacket, you need some food you might be not getting from the side of the road via your feeders, as they're called. You go back to the car, or you call the car up to the back of the group. You see guys put their hands up, and the car zips up, and you get what you need out of the car.
It's very nearly an art form in itself. Any exchange, any repair has to be done quickly and cleanly before the rider loses track of the group, where there's more speed and safety.
I think a good wheel can be changed within a few seconds. I mean, if you rip that wheel, if you get a good stop, the rider is just stable off the bike, and the mechanic runs up, pulls it in and out, you should be able to stop, wheel change, go within about 20 seconds.
Some adjustments can even be made on the fly, with a mechanic leaning out a car window to adjust the bike at 35 miles an hour. But it's not just repairs the support crews supply. Thanks to modern technology, tiny transmitters and receivers, there's a lot of information to pass from the caravan to the riders.
They're relaying tactical information, they're relaying what's going on up with the riders maybe ahead of you, behind you, what other teams are doing, what their strategies might be. So there's a lot of things that are ongoing.
And that information could mean the difference between the front of the race and the back of the pack.
The support crew is really critical in our next section. We've moved ahead now out of Georgetown. Right now, Jeff Swiggers there, still the leader, but just ahead, the monster awaits. The monster is Guanella Pass. The climb is 10 miles, basically straight up. From Georgetown, you climb to the summit at 11,671 feet. That's better than 2 miles above sea level.
And it's sharp climbing. I mean, they're going straight up.
Well, and you know what? The weather is changing here just a little bit, and you can see them starting to put on their rain capes and whatnot, because we've seen about a 50-degree temperature change here from very, very hot down in Boulder up through Blackhawk. Boom, the weather comes in. Not only is it raining, not only does that make it tough, but the road, it gets a lot stickier, it gets a lot slower, and so things have really broken up now as they come out of Georgetown. Here's the first time we've seen some of the people in the back, and that would be Scott Moniger, and he's making his way up towards the front, as is the man next to him. On his left, on his right, is Chris Weary from Boulder. So we're starting to see the strong men really make a play here, but nobody has yet really made a dent in Jeff Swiggers.
Look at the strength that he is climbing with. You just can't seem to slow him down.
Well, it really belies his age, because he's built like a mountain goat. He's lean, he's not that tall, he's light, and he just flows up this mountain. But the thing that really gets me is he just has no intimidation from these riders behind.
Right, he's young, but he's not afraid.
I think Jeff Swiggers blew a tire.
Yeah, and
I think he blew both, didn't he?
Yes, he did, and that's allowing everybody to catch up with him. I mean, the thing that'll trip him up today is not his strength, but mechanical problems. The same with Chris Weary.
Well, you start to see how bumpy and ruddy it is. Look at this descent right here. Boy, it is just incredible coming off this. This is not something that you generally do on a road bike.
How do you pick a line through all the rocks and ruts in a road like that.
Well, it looks like Jeff Swiggers, as just to interrupt that question, has gotten a flat on his front tire, and he's riding it down. It's very difficult to pick your line. You have to sight very far ahead and then just be very light on your bike. Keep the bike loose underneath you and just let it take the shock, because you don't have shock absorbers on the bike. So Jeff Swiggers doing a good job of just saying, can I please get a front wheel?
I mean, and that shows you how important it really is. It's a mobile pit crew, isn't it? We see in Indy racing, you drive into your pit, but your pit crew has to go with you.
Yeah, that's right. And here he's got neutral support. He doesn't have his own team car, so he's just getting a basic neutral wheel, but it looks like a good one. And so he'll be underway. But you lose your momentum, and that's the problem. Now look what Scott Moniger's done. He has put on a mountain bike. He's changed bikes at the top, gotten on a mountain bike, and he's just passed Jeff Swiggers and gone into the lead. So Scott Moniger using an interesting tactic for Team Mercury. Very good thinking for them.
And you know, yesterday he was not saying that he'd do this.
Yeah, we heard some people mentioning that was a possibility, that they would use two different kinds of bikes, but no one would say for sure.
Of course not. Tactics. Yeah. Don't let the other guy know.
Well, you know, the thing is, he had to be in the perfect position to do this. When he got to the top of Guanella, there were only 2 riders with him, and so he said, my team car's right here, it'll only take me a second to change, and this gives him a lot of rest when he goes down that descent. It's much harder to ride one of those road bikes with a very skinny tire and take all that pounding. He's on these fat tires, he's just plush down that descent, so really good tactics for him.
Is the worst over? They're past the halfway point. They've dealt with Guanella Pass, but we see the weather's changing too.
I think that it'll get much tougher, because not only is the weather changing, the wind is starting to come up now, and the fatigue is starting to really play a part.
Now, no doubt about it, at this point, the riders are starting to feel some serious aches and pains. All of the climbing over Guanella Pass, and now comes the downhill, and your leader heading to Grant is Scott Moniger. Now, from the summit of Guanella, it's about 13 miles into Grant, but that is a treacherous ride.
He was riding washboard there. Luckily he had his mountain bike. He was able to absorb some more of the shocks there. But a lot of washboard before he hit pavement, and a lot of the guys were really getting their arms beaten up by it.
Well, you know, Scott Moniger at 33 is one of the oldest riders in the race, but that means he's one of the most experienced. And so he has really thought this out well, along with John Warden, the Mercury team manager. And so I was very surprised to see Scott Moniger jump on this beefy of a mountain bike. You know, I thought maybe they'd go a little cyclocross, something light that they could play with a little more. But this is a hardcore, all-out mountain bike, and it's quite a bit slower with those big tires. But in this case, it's quite a bit faster, and you can see the jarring, and he's getting a lot less jarring than the guys with those very light road bikes are.
Yeah, he used this to his advantage. He really stepped out with this.
Well, you say he's 33. He's a bright guy. He might be a little older than everybody else. Here he's making the change back to his regular bike, his road bike.
Well, and you know, Scott Moniger wasn't planning to go solo at this point. He just wanted to have an easier ride, save himself some energy from the stress of that descent. And so he'll be expecting to be caught up, because it's still quite a long ways from the bottom, from Grant to all the way to the finish line over here in Breckenridge. I mean, you know, he's got a lot of things to face, let alone 3 more climbs after this.
Now, the leaders have made it through Grant, but for the stragglers, this is the end of the line. In this race, they force you to call it quits for falling too far back. Our Chris Schabel was with them in Grant.
Mark, by the time the riders get here to Grant, Colorado, they must be no more than 15 minutes behind the third group of riders in the red Zinger. If they are, well, they get pulled out of the race. You can only imagine all the frustration after making it over Guanella Pass and then getting to this point only to be pulled out. It's the last sound you want to hear while riding, a whistle. The whistle means all your sweat and hard work have ended. You can't keep up, and you're out of the race.
I got pulled on Guanella Pass when it started raining, and the temperature started dropping, and I think they just were too worried about our safety, so they pulled us.
It is frustrating. You prepare maybe 3 weeks for a race like this.
Couldn't do it anymore, and rode as long as I could until the broom wagon picked me up.
Though some are forced to stop because their legs can't carry them fast enough, others are forced to quit because of equipment problems.
Yeah, I flatted twice on the downhill. Had fixed both flats with quick fill, so there's no neutral, and it's a bummer, you know. I wanted to get here and make the time cut, but I guess I was out of it by just enough.
And while any of the riders who are behind the race are getting pulled out here at Grant, they can opt to continue on to Breckenridge at their own risk. All they have to do is hop on the highway. Most are deciding not to do that. Back to you.
Thanks, Chris. For the cyclists still ahead in the hunt, the next test is just ahead. As soon as the riders come out of Grant, they were climbing again 8 straight miles to the summit of Kenosha Pass. That's 10,000 feet above sea level.
And that's still, at 10,000 feet, we might not see that as so difficult, but it's even more than, almost all the Tour de France climbs.
Yeah, it's much higher than that, and you can certainly see the face of disappointment there on Jess Swiggers, because he had been in the lead for quite a few miles, and that flat put him behind now. I think he's sitting about in 4th place. There's the 3 leaders at this point, and we've got Scott Moniger, Chris Weary, and Carl Swenson, a name we have not really talked about, another mountain biker.
Another mountain biker, exactly. He showed real strength on the descent of Guanella, and that put him in a prime position to join the leaders here.
Now, is Moniger coming back to the pack here, or the other guys making the movement up?
As we watch Carl Swenson get a front change here, this is a much better time to get a front change now. They're climbing up still on Kenosha Pass, and he should be able to catch up quite quickly. You see how quickly they do this. But it's a matter of Scott Moniger did what he needed to do. Now he's got 2 strong riders with him. The 3 of them will work together. They've got a pretty good lead now. They're a couple minutes up on Swiggers at this point.
And you do need help like this in a ride like this. You need help getting up and over these passes and through these long flats.
Well, and you can see the rain is still coming down. The wind is turning towards their face now, so that just makes it that much harder. And there it confirms Chris Weary, Carl Swenson, and Scott Moniger. One thing about Carl Swenson that is really amazing, this man has been to 2 Olympics, their Winter Olympics, and it's for Nordic skiing. Last winter, he was the 50-kilometer Nordic national champion. Here he is competing for one of the great titles in North American bike racing just a few months later. Incredible.
I see these guys, they're so close now. Is there any conversation that takes place at all, or are you pretty much locked into your own zone?
A lot of conversation. These guys are talking very much about what's going on in the race. Are you working hard enough? I need a little more help. I need for you to give me help, because very much in bike racing, it's tactics and it's all about energy. And when you've got 3 guys together, you want to make sure everybody's pulling, as they say, or using their energy about as much as you are.
Yeah, you don't want to be the one who's putting everything out and dragging everybody else along.
Yeah, that's right. And it's still, we keep saying it is a long way, but it is a long ways to go.
We've got about 100 miles down now, roughly 40 or so to go. I think I probably made that sound a little bit easy, but it really isn't. The riders have made it over Kenosha Pass at this point, but the climbing's not done, not by a long shot. The next challenge comes about 15 miles from Kenosha Pass. That's Red Hill Pass. The summit sits at 9,993 feet.
Yeah, this wasn't as big a climb as some of the others have been, but you could see at this point in the day that it was really beginning to take its toll on everybody, especially the 3 leaders.
Well, the wind was coming from the side and a little bit from the head, and so that makes it difficult. What else makes it difficult is that if you're behind and you look down that long road and the guys are just 5 minutes ahead of you, talk about being demoralized. And these 3 riders are working quite well together continuously. You see Scott Moniger continues to feed. The other thing that Moniger has right now over the other 2 is he's got radio communication with the Mercury team. So John Worden's back there, and he's making sure that Scott Moniger is not using too much energy, not taking too much of a hard pull here. And so he's got a little bit of an advantage there as we go back to Jess Swiggers, who is by himself trying to get up to these guys. And it looks like finally Jess Swiggers may have gotten up to the front. So Jess Swiggers has ridden himself back into the front of this race over Red Hill. A phenomenal ride by the 20-year-old.
He was impressing. He's been impressing everybody all day with his power on the course, his knowledge of tactics, and just this attitude of, I'm going to be up there with you.
Well, and look at him. He goes right to the front. He's been basically by himself, either off the front or just behind this group. He catches back up. He goes right to the front. This guy is a marvel.
He's announcing, I have arrived, guys. Get out of my way.
No kidding.
Is that a horrible feeling when you're in the lead pack and you think you've finished off this young punk who's been making all kinds of noise, and all of a sudden he's joining the party again?
Well, I got to think they welcome the addition of another guy so that they can share the workload.
Well, it's no wonder that Davis Finney over here has been able to fill us with so many insights. He knows these roads so well. You're the most successful cyclist, really, in Colorado history. But like cycling, life has dealt Davis some ups and some downs, and it's been a very tough year for him. years, Davis Finney meant racing in Colorado. In 1993, Finney stepped away from his bike for a career in race commentary and running his cycling school with his wife, Connie Carpenter. Despite what the bike had given him, it wasn't hard to step away.
I've never really left my bike. It's more quiet. It sleeps a lot more now, my bicycle, but I really love being a racer, and I love the idea of, the bike was really a part of me, but the competition, I don't miss it all. I really enjoy watching Lance Armstrong, but I'm glad I'm not out there with him.
7 years later, and Finney faces an even more difficult challenge.
Well, now I have this problem with the Parkinson's disease.
Davis's Parkinson's disease was only diagnosed a few months ago, but as an athlete with an intimate sense of his own body, he had recognized problems for some time. Difficulties with motor control, loss of strength, tiring easily. He's looking now for the right medical program and the right mental attitude.
I need to think back and think about getting up Alpe d'Huez and how much I suffered there, and how just mental strength sort of put me over the top and got me through that event. And I think that mental strength and being smart about this Parkinson's will sort of hopefully see me through. I mean, it's an unknown, but I do have great faith in myself, and as an athlete I have great sensitivity for my body. And so I know when I'm losing, and yet at the same time I think I'm strong enough to lose some things, but still win. And I thank the Tour for that, and I thank bike racing for that.
Davis, I know you've heard this a lot lately. Everybody wishes you the best, of course. How are you doing? And what you said there near the end of the piece, where you talked about knowing your body, does being an athlete help you fight this?
Well, I believe it does. And the thing with Parkinson's is that if you don't, you start to lose physical capacity, and if you let it go, it doesn't come back. And so for me, being physically fit is really important. If I do too much exercise, well, that puts me down. But if I do enough, then I stay strong and I'm able to maintain. Right now, I'm shivering a lot, but it's not because of Parkinson's. It's because it's just about to start to snow here, and I've got shorts on.
The temperature changes today really have been amazing. It was great that way, how you segued into lightening up the moment a little bit. We have reached crunch time really here in the Zinger Challenge. One final hill before the dash, onto the finish line. After leaving Fairplay, the riders are facing Hoosier Pass. Oh, just 11,500 feet above sea level. I think only the best who have anything left in their legs at this point can be the ones who can contend.
Well, they're really pushing now. We had four. Jess Swiggers has started to fall off the back. The day has, all the efforts he's put into today have just gotten to be too much, and now you have, Swenson, Weary, and Moniger all pushing together, and it's about time for one of them to really make an attack and say, this race is mine.
Well, what you're going to see is somebody go, because Chris Weary is the best finisher, the best sprinter of these three. He wants to keep it together. He wants to go with these guys to the line because he knows he can beat them. But Carl Swenson wants to see it break up, and he wants to get ahead, and so does Scott Moniger. So it's a little bit tactical because these guys have a very big lead, so they don't have to go flat out at this point. They can sort of soft pedal, save energy. But look what's happened. Scott Moniger says, I've got a lot left. I've done the perfect ride today. I used the mountain bike. I saved my energy. I sat on the wheels while we went across through Fairplay. And now I'm going to go, and I'm going to leave you guys behind. And it looks like he's doing a good job.
And that's exactly what he's doing, and he's setting himself up to have enough of a gap so that Weary's sprint performance really doesn't figure into it.
He's really had a strategic plan going into this, and he's just following it exactly how he wanted to.
Well, that's right. And Moniger is a good man for the mountains. The famous Mount Evans hill climb, Moniger's won that in the last few years, and he's ridden it for about 10 years. So he's very, very strong on this, and he knows once he gets over the top of Hoosier Pass, he's a very good descender, and all he needs is a little bit of a gap, because as he's going down, the other riders are still going up, and he's just drawing right away from them. So Moniger is over the top now of the last climb, and it's pretty much, guys, all downhill.
Yeah, how do these conditions really affect you on a descent?
Well, I tell you, he's 7 hours of bike racing right at the top of Hoosier Pass right now. And so He's very tired. The energy with the rain is very draining.
And he's got cold to deal with now, too.
You become stiff, and your legs are really tired and sore. And yet here it is. The road's pretty slippery, and yet you're in the lead. So you got to go out there and give everything you can. But, you know, he's doing a good job.
The winner of the Celestial Season Cycling Challenge is about to be decided here, and it'll be decided in Breckenridge. Right down Main Street they will come. The final 11 miles from the top of Hoosier Pass, the riders will race into Breckenridge, make one lap into town before that dash to the finish line.
Look at Scott Moniger. He looks so smooth here. Very confident, rolling, very aerodynamic as he comes in towards town. You can see just how wet it is at this point, but he is really home free, barring any accident.
He still looks strong, which after 7.5 hours of riding is amazing, just amazing.
Well, when you have a lead like that, Davis, he's now about a minute or so ahead of the rest of the pack. Are you worried that something could possibly go wrong because those tires have been bumped and banged and all the things that have happened to them?
Well, what you're really thinking is trying to be in the moment. And when I was in this position, I used to just say, don't worry about what might happen. Just focus on what is. And what is that Scott Moniger has had a dramatic ride today. He has faced everything from 95 degrees heat, 14,000 feet of climbing, hail, wind, everything you can imagine Colorado has thrown at him. Mo Siegel, these guys dreamed up this event, and Scott Moniger has overcome it all. He has really put in a tremendous ride.
Yes, an epic ride, really, on an epic course. And as he speeds into Breckenridge, this is something to cheer.
And to be considered the favorite going into the race, and to have such a plan, there were so many things that you would consider unexpected on this course, yet he was prepared for all of them.
Well, Scott Moniger knows Colorado well. He knows these roads well. And like me when I raced, he loves to play the favorite in his hometown. And look at this crowd who stayed through this miserable day up here in Breckenridge. It is a wonderful sight to see Scott Moniger roll through with probably, I think he comes through with just one little lap to go.
Boy, is that a tease. You come through the finish line there and they tell you got to take another lap.
Well, a lot of people, a lot of the riders have blown right through saying, oh, that's it, but it wasn't.
That's it, only 7.5 hours.
And here he comes now. He has made his final lap around the city square. The arms are up in the air, and he is the champion.
He's clearly soaking up the moment, isn't he, Dave?
That is what you look for, those few seconds when you get to put your arms up in the air. There is very few feelings in my lifetime than putting my hands up at the end of a long day's effort. And Scott Moniger, what a deserved victory.
There is your winner of the Zinger Cycling Challenge, Scott Moniger, in a time of 7 hours, 17 minutes, and 34 seconds. That, to me, is just mind-numbing and body-numbing.
Fantastic ride for him. Carl Swenson comes in second, and Chris Weary comes in third. So those three riders put paid to Jess Swiggert's early effort, but really do a good job today.
Let's listen to Scott Moniger's thoughts as he spoke to you gentlemen.
Scott, what was the toughest part of the race today?
For me, it was probably the last 40, 50 miles. The weather really turned pretty lousy. We got a lot of wind, a lot of rain. The temperature just kept getting colder and colder as we got higher in elevation. And it got to the point where, it felt good to go up the climb just because it kind of, made you generate a little bit of heat. But, I rode this course about 10 days ago, and it was 85, 90 degrees there on 285 through Alma and up Hoosier Pass. So, conditions are just definitely were not ideal today.
Now you switched bikes at the top of Guanella, and did that help you to just be able to rest a little bit? Because that is a very, very nasty descent.
It was, and like I said, I had not ridden that before, but I had driven it in a car, and it was really pretty rough even in the car. So I just thought, as far physically, the way it was going to beat up my arms and my shoulders and everything, if I could sit on a mountain bike with suspension and big tires, it wouldn't be any faster, but it certainly wouldn't beat me up as much physically. And
happy to see the finish line.
Very happy, and I was actually really surprised to see this big of a crowd on a day like today.
Well, Scott Moniger deserved to see a big crowd at the end. He's the winner. Carl Swenson was second, a mountain bike rider. Chris Wary and the other mountain bike rider fourth. Pete Swenson, Carl's brother, ends up fifth. Davis, in a final thought, was this too difficult a course? Is this too tough to do to a human being?
No, but it is close. But you know what I got to say is welcome back, Colorado, big-time bike racing, because it's been a long time since the Coors Classic, and thank you, Celestial Seasonings, for bringing this challenge.
Greg, you rode in front of them most of the way.
It was a great day. It was one of those things that I just do not want to forget. It was an exciting day. I want to see this race back again next year.
I'll tell you what, this to me really was better than watching Survivor, because this was the real deal out here. Again, for Greg Moody and for Davis Finney, I'm Mark Soysher. Had a terrific time out here. For everyone at News 4, we enjoyed bringing you the first ever Zinger race, the return of the Celestial